Very good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We're pleased to have all of you with us. I'm Anton Thayalan, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I will be the voice of the webinar this afternoon. A warm welcome to the season finale of Reset and Go 2, aptly named Revive and Grow, which formed a part of our unique Saturdays After Learning with Luminary segments which unfolded over the course of the past 3 months. With today, we would have delivered 38 segments of pure learning during these sessions. And we are at the last segment here today. And for the last time this season, gear up and get your learning on. In today's session of Revive and Grow, we're discussing building a personal brand, a conversational exchange of experiences and ideas for you to grasp the best practices, alter perceptions, and make note to implement. Facilitating the conversation today is Sitari Medagama, as a trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. And joining her as our subject matter experts are two well-known faces in the local market. Fahad Farouk, an international trainer and a certified transformative coach. And Mas Saratnan, who is the people culture champion, educator, life coach, and mentor. Over to them now for what promises to be an hour of truly sensational conversation. Sitari, over to you.
Thank you, Anton. Good afternoon, everyone. It's going to be a very dynamic and interesting conversation, I believe, today. And we go right into the subject right now because we have two very dynamic guests joining us today. So at one point, personal branding used to be predominantly be recognized with a few industries like fashion or sports or even the medical industry. But today with our very dynamic economy, which is driven by social media and also networking, personal branding has become a necessary tool. It's a tool to market yourself, your brand, your industry, basically to survive. So our guests today, they have brought in a very fresh spirit, especially to the Sri Lankan business scenario with their lifestyle, their work, and I believe that you inspire a lot of youth in their personal and corporate journey. So I'll start with you, Fahad. This question is over to you. So you coach, mentor, and also you launched yourself as a lifestyle and a motivational guru or speaker, say. You see personal branding. What is it to you?
Well, hey guys, thank you so very much for having me. I'm super honored to be here, and it's great to be a part of this. Great to connect with so many people. What I'd like to say is that with personal branding, the first thing we've got to understand is that you have absolutely no choice, right? It's not optional. Do I get into personal branding? Do I not? It's not an optional thing anymore, because as of now, you are getting branded anyway, in terms of how people look at you, how people judge you, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's on social media. So for me, personal branding is something that I'm going to take control of if I'm being branded anyway. So some people might think maybe you need to be in a certain profile to be concerned about your personal brand. Some people might think that it's only for a certain segment of corporates or even individuals, but that is not the case. Every single person, when they look at you, when they see you, when they hear about you, when they stalk you, they're building up a perception of you. So my question is, if that's happening anyway, that means you're getting branded anyway. So for me, personal branding is about taking control of that perception. So I show them who I authentically am without leaving it up to various interpretations.
Right, thank you. That's definitely a different perspective, I believe, because I like what you just told us, actually. If people are going to brand you anyway, yeah, why not do it positively, isn't it? Yeah. Mas, would you like to contribute something? What is personal branding to you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in line with what Fahad said. I also believe that people will brand you whether you like it or not. And all of us have a personal brand. And while we have it, why not market it and purposefully build it so that people can see exactly what we want out there? Now, just speaking from my personal experience, I found that, having the wrong brand out there can be very disastrous to you because people will see you in a different light. Whereas if you purposefully build your brand, you can actually make people believe you are a particular personality or you have a particular work ethic. So I think personal branding has always been there. It has not been a conscious effort before. Many people haven't realized that they are creating a brand, but it is there. So why not purposefully build on it so that you can ensure people are seeing exactly what you are and what you want to put out there. So that's my perspective.
Thank you very much, Mas. That's lovely. So may I ask you, like, as you said, people can actually perceive you differently than what you really are. So when you actually promoted yourself, or when you thought that you'll get control of yourself, what was that trigger point, that turning point, which actually told you that I need to now do it positively? Mas, was there a trigger point for you?
Sure. So I think let me just start from where I was before, and I didn't really have much of a personal brand. I really didn't focus, or I wasn't conscious of what I was, and I did feel that I was not really out there, and I just posted whatever I felt like. And the turning point was one day somebody said, "Is this really you?" I mean, and it wasn't someone I wanted to be. So from that point onwards, I thought, listen, it's up to me to start a personal brand, but it is not easy to change perception because it takes years and years sometimes. And it's not only a matter of saying, okay, listen, this is my new personal brand. It's a part of the hard work that goes behind it as well. You need to start building it. And it takes a long time, especially when people have seen you in a different light before. So that's where all the hard work comes in and the consistency. And it takes a very long time. And for me personally, it's taken years to build the brand that I put out there, because where I was before is completely different from where I am now. And it's not as easy as just flipping a switch and saying, this is my new brand. You have to put a lot of work behind it. And that's what I've been doing, realizing that this is not going to happen overnight. I'm still working on it. I don't think it's a static process. It's evolving, and it will keep evolving until, you get it right or you're thereabout.
Sure, thank you, Mas. Fahad, would you like to share some skill sets? What do you think the necessary tools that somebody should have when they are actually thinking of, going and marketing themselves, branding themselves positively?
I think it's the way you need to look at it, whoever it is, it's not about branding yourself, it's about rebranding yourself, right? So correctly, as Mas said, there are certain perceptions about you. So let's take a product in a market, right? If this product in the market was going to reposition themselves, there are a couple of questions they would ask. First, what do we stand for, right? Second, how do we communicate that? So those are the two primary questions. The problem that a lot of people do is they run into personal branding means having a business card and dressing right, but the base or the foundation of what do you stand for as a person isn't really solid. So it's like it's a really fragile structure then. So in terms of skill set, when you're going into it, look at it as a rebranding, because up until now, like Mas said, there are certain perceptions about you, and you're going to reposition those perceptions. So if you're going to reposition it, you need a base. What do I stand for? How is that different to what I've stood for before? What is my value proposition? Like, what's my core? What's my thing? So if I take me as an example, what I stand for is I want to change the perception or the perspective of every single person I meet at least a little bit. So it doesn't matter if I interact with you online, face to face, through my posts, through my videos, whichever. If you interact with me, your perception of the world has to be changed, and that's what I look to do. So that's my base. So then from there, I ask the question, how do I do it? right? So one obvious medium these days is the social media angle, and you've got to be on that A game. It's not very difficult. It's just that lots of things you need to learn, and once you learn it, it becomes automatic, right? So I guess we'll get into that later. So understanding what you stand for and being able to articulate that, being able to communicate it, being able to defend it when it's questioned is something that you need to, is a core skill, I think, right? Also, you've got to be humble about it in the sense that you've got to be open to understand that you're a living, breathing human being and your why or that core will change over time, and be receptive to that. So for me, if you were to ask me getting into it, what would be a core skill? It would be understanding what the hell I'm about and then figuring out the mediums of communicating it. If that basis is solid, everything will sort of fall into place.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, you actually lead me to another point to ask you. It's like, see, it's very common these days. We see many people coming out and they preach lifestyle, they preach management, spirituality. Yeah, so I think, as you said, having the know of who you are and what you want others to see you as, it's quite important. So. So the thing is, like, the social media and the networking is so dynamic. So how would you differentiate yourself? You know, there may be so many people and they are in the same media, they are in the same networking. And especially if you take the Sri Lankan, say, the market, I'm not talking into international right now, it will be a very small kind of closed, aren't we? So how would you differentiate yourself there? And not get compared to this one and that one, and how would you differentiate yourself, Fahad?
I bring that down to your fingerprint, right? So your fingerprint is unique to you, and your fingerprint is not going to ask other fingerprints, how do I be different from you, right? So then what is your fingerprint? It's the mark you leave. It's an impression. So then automatically it comes down to, say, you ask a room full of people a question, and if your answer is just like the other 9 answers, if your point of view is just like the other 9 points of view, your fingerprint is not unique. Your fingerprint only becomes unique when your angle, your perspective, your response stands out. So if you're getting into a space that's already saturated, let's say it's a red ocean space, and you find that your responses, your philosophies, your value addition is similar to everybody else's, then I've got news for that person. The truth is, you're not going to stand out. So then what's your unique angle? What's your different take on it? And even if you might be a standard person spewing the same standard stuff, what's your unique outlook? You know, what is there a different way of you delivering it? It's like the same fruit can be consumed as a juice, as a fruit, as a frozen popsicle, whatever, right? But you're still consuming the same fruit. So even if it's the same thing, is there something unique about it? Is there something fingerprint about it? Then at your core, you're automatically standing out. And then you just got to keep backing it up with time over and over again.
That's great. Maz, any advice on to the youth who might be joining us today, the young corporate executives, what will make you authentic? Any tools that you can share which has helped you?
Yeah, so well, just like Fahad said, I do believe it's important to have your individuality, to have your unique selling proposition. And basically, if it revolves around something that you really like, something that you're very passionate about, the chances are you will have greater success with it. Now, if I look at my life, I'm very passionate about sports. I'm very passionate about reading, and my unique selling proposition focuses around that area, those 2 areas. But what my advice to anyone listening would be, and what has worked for me, is consistency. So I would stick to this whatever happens. I mean, even on days that I don't feel like running, I will run. Even on days when I can't read, I will finish a book. So I think that element of grit is something that I try and harness, because that is what I feel I'm good at, right? I'm passionate about running and sports. I'm passionate about reading, but if I was only passionate about it, maybe it wouldn't come out as strong. But consistently doing this every day, in and out, every day, every month, every year, you build that sort of image saying, okay, you are the go-to person. And by no means do I consider myself to be the best in that area. I'm sure there are millions of people who read more than me. I'm sure there are so many athletes who run more than me. But where I would say, okay, fine, I am average, but I will consistently do what I'm doing in order for me to create my brand and also enjoy what I'm doing. So my advice for anyone listening would be stay consistent with whatever you are passionate about. Don't stop. I mean, if there are days that you don't feel like running, you continue run anyway. The only bad workout is a workout that never happened, right? And then that's the same thing with anything in life, right? If you like something, you do it. You will have days where you just can't get out of bed. You'll have days where you just want to be around with people. If it's something that you really like, you do it anyway. And it's worked for me. So that's just my individual perspective. I hope that made a bit of sense.
Yeah, definitely, Mas, because I think when people like hear the name, also it's like more about this. Your outdoor living is a big part of you, isn't it? It's like, and also you come from a very corporate background, but it's like with your running, with your outdoor living, it's a very wholesome lifestyle kind of thing. Yeah, so that's great. So we have a question from the audience already. Okay. How important is personal branding for entrepreneurs and young executives? Maz, would you like to take that on first, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think normally you would say you need to be passionate about something, and you need to have that skill set as well. If you combine both these two elements, you will become successful. But I also feel it is important to look at the other small ancillary areas as well, like your networks, your personal branding, because all these other aspects also play a major part in putting yourself out there, because you can be great at what you do, right? And you can be quite happy with it as well. But if you want to take it a step further, question is, do people really know what you're doing? Have you put yourself out there? So my answer to that is, yes, it's very important in whatever you do. I mean, not only if you're an entrepreneur, but as an individual, you need to create a personal brand for yourself. Because like I said, if you want to take it to the next level, you can be great. You can be really good at the job you do or the product that you service. But if people don't know about it, I mean, there is a hurdle there. And that's my perspective over it.
Definitely. Fahad, any advice there? How important is personal branding for entrepreneurs and young executives?
On that, for entrepreneurs especially, you have to ask two questions, right? What's the product and who's selling the product? And if you're an entrepreneur, the product or service you're offering is the product, right? And who's selling it? It's you. It's the same thing when we go to a shop and we're trying to, let's say, buy a bar of soap, right? What's this? Okay, it's for dry skin. Who is it made by? So we're constantly evaluating based on things, right? What's the product? Who's selling it? What's the product? Who's selling? So when it comes to you, an entrepreneur specifically, right? You might think that I'm going to put my heart and soul into my work and the work will speak for itself. We don't live in that age anymore. People are asking, whose company is it? Who's doing this? Which group of people are doing it? So they're asking that question. So when the moment they know, oh, you're just an Instagram search away, you're just a LinkedIn search away, and then they click on it, and the first post that comes up is you just drunk and passed out somewhere in a drain. That's a normal thing to do, but that leads this buyer to associate your product or service with that person who's selling it. Okay. Now, I'm not saying don't live that kind of lifestyle, but if you're an entrepreneur, then part of you is being sold. And you can't have that tarnished. So those things go on some other profile, some private profile, and clean up your social or whatever, right? For a young executive, it's the same thing. We live in an age where we think hard work will speak for itself. It doesn't, because you are being judged, you are being branded. And especially if you're a young executive, you're living in a very competitive space with a whole bunch of other young executives. And if your work is pretty much the same, then they are going to the next level of seeing who you are, which is like, what's your circle of friends? What do you do in your extracurriculars? So then your brand or who's selling it type of thing comes into question and comes into the spotlight. I'm not saying it's the correct way of doing things. I'm just saying that's how it happens. So if we can capitalize on it, then, it's a no-brainer that it's like really, really, really the way to go.
Yeah, sorry. So those of you who are joining us now, please send in your questions and we welcome you to the chat. Please your questions to the chat. Yeah, that actually it makes sense, as you said, like the house and the technicalities of it. It actually leads me to ask you this, because we do work with a lot of young people, young graduates.
Sorry, I think you're breaking up.
Working. Hello? Can you hear me?
Now it's better. Yeah.
It's better? All right. Okay. So, yeah, so you brought in a very pertinent fact, actually. As you said, you may be good at certain thing, but it's like how you actually take yourself out there and the how part of it. Because we work with a lot of youth straight out of university, straight out of college. They're very good at what they have learned in. They believe that they can do a lot. This brings me to a question which actually I'm personally involved in my work. We hear a lot of like disparity of the local school, university graduates in our country not getting the right opportunities and not getting passed, they're getting passed on due to lack of exposure and the confidence level. So I'm involved in a lot of, like activity trying to help these guys to build up and things like that. So what is your perspective, gentlemen? Do you think this all the technicality of personal branding should be brought into our education system to help the youth? Do you think it will benefit them? Fahad?
Absolutely, because the playing field is never leveled. Everybody doesn't have the same privilege or same opportunity, and rather, I mean, that's an aspirational utopian future. But until we get there, what are the various tools you can use to supplement your journey? Like, so for example, your car is not as fast as somebody else's car, but can you fit a turbo onto it? Can you fit like jet blasters onto it? Can you modify it? So this kid that's going to school, and we've all been through it, where we're essentially, like Pink Floyd said, we're just bricks in the wall. We're just made to fit in. We're just made to be a part of the entire process. When we stand out, we're admonished. We're only supposed to stand out in the ways that the school expects us to stand out. It's very structured, and then we come into the work, sort of work environment, and then it's very competitive in a different sense. Yet we're expected to collaborate. We're not taught teamwork in school. And then, some guy somewhere will have a seminar on personal branding, and we think that it's about emulating someone, and then we have this idol worshipping happening. We lose our sense of identity, and then it just becomes this shitstorm of, suddenly you're 25 and you don't know who the hell you are. But if we have a process, I don't know if it's called personal branding or not, but from a younger age, where we can help an adolescent who's in those transformative stages to ask those questions: who I am, what do I stand for, what are my values, what do I believe in, who am I at my core? It's going to solve a lot of problems in terms of conflicting adults who are born, adults who just don't know what to do with their life, because they've never had an opportunity to confront those questions, because everything is pre-decided. Like, from the time you're born, everything is pre-decided. The only time in a South Asian country you get a choice is maybe what to eat, right? Even that's limited. Your education path, in some cases, who you're going to marry, everything is pre-decided for you. And even if it's not explicitly said, there is a subtle pressure in the corner, that guilt-tripped pressure in the corner of expectation.
Very true.
How are we? We're not raising individuals then, no? We are just raising copies of we're raising copies of ghosts. So we need to have a system in place that helps people explore their individuality. And if a personal branding program is one of it, then man, I'm all for it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So Mas, what do you think about it? This is actually quite pertinent for the areas of work we are in.
Sure. So let me just put my recruiter's hat on for a second.
Right.
So when we get CVs from universities, it doesn't matter whether it's a local or private university, we can actually tell which university it's come from by just looking at the format. So this is where, so this probably answers the question, do we need to include some sort of personal branding into the curriculum at universities? And I think it's absolutely necessary, because I mean, an example from my past, what I did before when I was in university, whatever I felt strongly about, I just posted it. I didn't really care about what people thought. I used to engage in a lot of heated discussions. Some of it wasn't well thought of. But right now we live in a digital world and and in a global village. So any information that is available openly or that's made public, your potential recruiter could be looking at it, and we do it as well. So before we recruit someone, and we all say, right, we're looking for people who has the right attitude. Technical skill we can train, but attitude is something that is a little more difficult because you are often hard-coded when you are younger. So we're looking at people's posts, understanding their different views, what they have posted, what their brand is. So unless they're very conscious to their digital footprint, it could prove detrimental, especially if they're very good students who have a great future ahead of them. Something like that could be the determining factor for them not getting a chance to get employment. So I think it's important. I don't know whether it should be added in the curriculum, but it should be brought up so that everyone knows that this is out there. People will identify with your personal brand. They will search for your digital footprint, and they will assess you based on that. Because when we go in for interviews, we only have 10 or 15 minutes, and that's so little time that we can assess somebody. So that's why we tend to look at your digital footprint, social media, what you have on LinkedIn, Instagram, what you posted, anything that you made public, we will look at. So that's why it's really important to be conscious of it. And I think it would be really great if schools, starting not only at universities, at school level, at some level, they were educated on the importance of having a personal brand. So yeah, that's my point of view.
Thank you very much. So if we have any parents, any decision makers in any areas of education where you can make an influence, please. So this is a lot of food for thought for the future generation. And for you guys who are joining us now, thank you very much for joining us in this afternoon. Please use the tech chat option to send in your questions. Yep, so we move on. Yep. Yeah. So we were talking about the social platform earlier. So actually, like, do you have any kind of advice or a guideline or something that you can share for the young people who have joined in today, who are actually trying to launch their careers as influencers? Because being an influencer is like, I don't know whether it's a necessity for that person, but what I see is I'm a mom of a teenage daughter. It's like a thing to be these days. So it's a necessity from the peers. So whether you make a career out of it or whether you don't, so you end up becoming an influencer, and then thereby, so other than you dictating terms for your life and making a career out of it, sadly you are an influencer, and then that is dictating terms to you. What do you think of this scenario, Farhad? I'd like to ask this question from Farhad, especially because I know that you are very active with the social media, and I know that you are very, you interact with a lot of young people. So it would be very good to have your perspective on that.
So that question is that question is very dynamic, because what young people see when they see people who are influencers, the people who have the 40, 50, 100,000 following, they see the outer shell of they see the glamour, let's say, right? They're getting the hotel deals, they're getting the label deals, they're getting these stays, and they think if I get that amount of followers, I will get those things. Okay. I'm not discrediting that system. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I'll give you my perspective on what I think is more genuine and more organic. And that is, when something comes to you, if you put it out just as it is, say some brand or some property thing comes to you and you're putting out just as it is, there's no really value addition happening, right? So it comes to you, you've got to modify it, you've got to add some value, and then you've got to put it out. So then the people who follow you for you, because they like you and your value addition, have more buy-in rather than you copy pasting some content, right? It's
Sure.
like if you're talking to kids, the people who are doing university assignments, you take my content, but just change it a little bit. So it's about adding value. It's about modifying.
Yeah.
It's about let's call it upselling, in a sense, where you're just making it something that has a part of you, that is something more, that's customized. So if you start doing that, then you gain more authentic followers. So my social media growth is very slow, right? I'm not even at 10,000 people. I'm at like 5,800 or something. It's very slow. And the reason for that is, A, I could be more disciplined, but B, maybe to my own detriment, I take a lot of time when I put something out to think, does this reflect my value addition? So I have a grid system going on where it's an image and a quote and an image and a quote, an image and a quote. Even the quotes, I have tons that are written, but then from the 10 I write, I will throw 9 away because they're just too cheesy or they're not real or whatever. So I hold that standard to what I put out. So even if I'm posting a picture of me, is it reflecting something that's unique? Like, is it showing off my fruity shirt, or is it showing off the shoes I like, or is it depicting something that I'm doing? So for me, everything is about, is it reflecting my values? So for a young person who has these aspirational goals of, let's say being an influencer, which I'm not, is that you need to see what value am I going to add to my content. Answer that question first. Secondly, that value that you're adding can't be artificial. It has to be something you live. So the greatest example that we have today is how Ellen DeGeneres' talk show is just crashing all over her world, because on her show, she's talking about be kind, be compassionate, etc., etc. But when the covers come off, it appears that that's not the case. So instantly, all those followers are the same people who adored her, who in an instant flip because, hey, this is not authentic. This is not something you believe in. Same thing we see when big celebrities are endorsing one brand of drink, but in public, the paparazzi catches them with another brand of drink. They're like, hey, this is not authentic. You don't really believe in this. So then you get caught out. So then people know it's not authentic. So add value authentically and the growth will happen.
Thank you very much. That's some good points there. So I think our viewers have seen you chilling out there, Mas. So probably they can see that you're outdoors chilling in Norelia. So they ask you, with your busy work schedule, outdoor living, hobbies, and basically the wholesome living, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Right. So I think everyone is consistent with your standards. I mean, you set a certain standard for yourself. And for example, if I say I'm going to run 5 kilometers every day, whatever happens, that's going to happen. So if I say I'm going to, I have a really busy day and, it takes up maybe 8, 10 hours, 12 hours of the day, my standard is I'm going to run that 5 kilometers anyway, because that's who I am, right? So it's being consistent with that. So right now I'm on holiday in Norelia, but even though I'm on holiday, I still do my runs. I still, read my books, because that's who I am. So I think, like Fahad said as well, you need to have organic growth and you need to promote yourself by what you actually do. So for me, I spend a lot of time, doing sporting activities. I spend a lot of time reading, and this is what I do, and I'm consistent with it, and it's a part of my lifestyle as well. So as busy as my day is, even if I have to work till 10 o'clock in the night, I will go and do my 5 kilometer run, because that's being consistent with who I am. So I think it's up to everyone to identify, okay, what is the most important to you? What is your lifestyle? If it's work, then it's work. But if it's work and having that balance in your life, then it has to be that balance. And it doesn't come overnight. It comes by doing this over and over again. Like, for example, I was never a reader. 2 years ago, I had never read a book in my life, right? But then I joined this book club and I started reading, and now I do about 3 books a week. And it wasn't easy, but I forced myself in the beginning, and I began to like it, and now it's become a lifestyle for me, right? And I'm passionate about it now because it's something I really like to do. So all I can say is, whatever standard that you set for yourself, if you say that, you are a sports enthusiast, or if you are a reader, or if you are whatever it may be, that will happen anyway, because that's who you are. That's your lifestyle. It doesn't matter how busy you are. You will find some time to do it. So yeah, that's how I tackle it, balancing work as well as my extracurricular in one.
Right. Thank you very much, Maz. That's a lot of discipline going on there. Yeah, 5 kilometers. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. Yeah. I'm taking some notes actually, Maz, as we speak. Yeah. So those of who have just joined in, we are in conversation with Fahad and Maz on personal branding, and we welcome you to the show. And we again, I think we covered this actually earlier part in the show. We have another question from the audience about how important is it for entrepreneurs and young executives. I think Fahad answered that question earlier part of the show. Fahad, can you give just a couple of pointers for the who have just joined in? I think they have messed it up.
Absolutely. So the key thing is what's the product and who's selling the product. So it's not a question of is it important or how important, because I think those two questions you shouldn't even be asking. We shouldn't be asking ourselves that, because by default it is important. The question is what sort of impact is it going to have? And think about it like you're buying a product from a company that has a poor track record of hygiene or something, or you're buying food from a restaurant that didn't pass the PHIs, whatever. So if you're an entrepreneur, anybody who's getting stuff from you or your services or whatever, it's the same philosophy. So you need to understand that you are representing whatever product or service that you have. People are going to search for you. They're going to find you, because we're a crazy bunch of stalkers in this world. They will find you. They will search for you. They will check you out. They will judge you. And they will create a perception about you. And man, if that's happening, then you make sure that you give them the best possible perspective. Yeah, sure. It's like you take 10 million selfies for the perfect selfie, right? So same thing with your brand. Figure out the best angle and then sell the crap out of it.
For sure. Yeah. So you actually, in the earlier conversation, you brought out a very current topic actually about the Ellen Show. So that prompts me with this question actually. Now, there are people who have actually made a career out of their personal branding, right? They've done it very successfully, like Chiara Ferragni, Jay Shetty. So if I may ask both you gentlemen, who actually inspired you in this big personal branding? Any celebrities who inspire you in this space? Fahad?
Yes, actually, I have two people who I model actually three people who I model my approach on. One of them is this gentleman called Nikola Tesla.
Okay.
Not a very popular personal brand icon, but if you look at Tesla, he absolutely lived what he built. He died a pauper. Edison, that terrible man, Thomas Alva Edison, stole most of his ideas, but that didn't stop Tesla from being authentic to what he envisioned the world would be. And that was so authentic to his own detriment.
Sure.
The second person is Freddie Mercury, because he went through this journey of self-discovery and was just unapologetically himself, and he backed himself. Which also brings me to the third person, which is Muhammad Ali, because he was willing to go through with giving up or losing his boxing title and all those things just because he didn't want to fight in the Vietnam War. So those are people who had strong personal, viewpoints, and they lived by those viewpoints. So whatever came and went, that was just still standing, that was just still solid, and that didn't change. So if I look at the core, like honestly, in today's day and age, it's difficult to say what's pretend and what's made up. It's really difficult because either people are doing it so well or the line is blurred. But for me, when I follow all three of their life, like Nikola Tesla, Freddie Mercury, and Muhammad Ali, it just seemed like that they're all dead now. And it just seemed like every decision they made, there were consequences. We saw the consequences, and it just tied back to that value. And then, so it's the same thing for me, right? Everything I do is value based. So if I'm going into a program wearing a watermelon or pineapple or a flamingo shirt, and everybody else is dressed in like, suit and tie or whatever, I am doing it because it reflects my value of energy and standing out in my own unique way. Now that is backed with competence. And I can't go there and I can't be spectacularly crap at what I'm trying to do. I need to be able to back it up with competence. So for me, it's about having that value, backing it up, and regardless of what comes, saying, hey, I made a value-based decision, and that's who I am, kind of thing.
Yeah. Maz, who are the celebrities who inspire you?
Okay, so let me just rewind back maybe about 3 years ago. It was 2017, and I planned to go on a holiday in January. But then one of my friends came up to me and said, listen, there's this guy who's coming to speak in Singapore. His name is Tony Robbins. Would you like to come and watch him live? There are like 12,000 people who have already enrolled. And I was like, listen, it's Bali, or listen to a guy for 4 days, But for some reason, I just went ahead with it because guess what? At that particular point in my life, it was okay. It wasn't great. A number of different aspects were just like going along. It wasn't extraordinary, but I spent 5 days there, and this particular gentleman, Tony Robbins, it's not that he particularly inspired me in the way he lived his life per se, but he enabled me, or he helped me find myself. And what I learned from that session was, how do I become the best version of me, right? How do I get more focus in my life? And I owe a lot to him, because if you knew me in 2017 as you would know me now, you would see a massive difference. I mean, if you even scroll down my Facebook timeline and you see a 2017 master as a completely different me. And I think that has been the biggest change for me, and I owe a lot to him. Like, I don't really aspire to be like him in particular, but what he has taught me has been so instrumental, because it's helped me find that sort of fulfillment that I've been looking for, not only in terms of my corporate life, but everything else that's happening. It's helped me being more content and happy with what I have. So yeah, so Tony Robbins has been my guru over the last couple of years.
That's lovely. So actually, this is for the audience who have joined in. I think it's so important that you find the right people to inspire you to become the best versions of yourself. You're not imitating a lifestyle, you're not stealing anything away from them. But as Fahad and Maz put it very, very articulately, it's like finding the right person to inspire you to bring the best out of you. So great, guys. Thank you very much. So yeah, so we spoke about the social responsibility of the influencers, and both you guys work with a lot of youth, of young people, and I'm not saying you are not young, you are young yourself somewhat, yeah, maybe. Yeah. So do you find your privacy when you are branding yourself, when you obviously want people to know you in a positive way? Yes, of course, but does that really invade your privacy as such, because people have kind of already perceived you as this person? Does that actually bother you? Fahad, would you go?
Well, I've a lot of people don't know this, but I'm generally a very shy person. When I'm not
say not.
When I'm not on a stage. So if I'm on a stage, if I'm like comparing an event or doing a training or something, then I think I have what's called an ambivert personality. It's a mixture of an extrovert and an introvert. So the personality that's on stage is very like in your face, loud and whatever. But then when I get off stage, I just prefer to, my phone in a corner type of thing. And it's a contrast sometimes. But I appreciate the fact that people connect with who they see. And when they meet you and they talk to you, they are not talking to who you are in that moment. They're talking to who they connected with. It doesn't mean that it's pretend. It just means that there are facets of our personality. And because we are complicated creatures, and we've got to decide which facets of our personality we choose to, let's say, market. So for instance, there are, let's say, an example with me, right? So I used to like taking pictures. So I think about 5-6 years ago, I covered a couple of weddings. I had my own photography page and stuff. But then that was a facet of my interest and my personality that didn't complement my purpose of, making an impression, etc., etc. So that part I didn't publicize, and if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. It's not a commercial part for me, and it's not something I talk about. Am I hiding it? No. Like if you search, it's there. If I was asked about it, would I not say anything? No. If you ask, I will say. But I choose what to, just think of it as like a bunch of faders on a mixer. I'm choosing what to, increase and what to reduce. But I'm not hiding anything. I'm not pretending anything, right? The moment that happens, then you're fake. So what I think that people like the most about whoever they connect with is that aspect of people being real. You're just everybody who people like, whoever they are. In Sinhala, I'll use this word in Sinhala, it's like tapi wage type of thing. It's just like us. So when we see, like, it's common for all of us, right? So whenever I see like a major celebrity and I see that person who's like, makes the same mistakes, does the same stupid stuff, like just like me kind of thing, and it just connects you. So in terms of privacy, I think, yes, there are aspects of your life that as you become mega and mega and mega, that's under scrutiny. Like, I mean, paparazzi and celebrities are a great example of it. They can't just step out without, people, bothering them. But I guess it's a trade-off, no? Everything has a cost, and you have to ask yourself, what is the cost? And if you're willing to, if the benefit outweighs the cost, then I guess you have your answer. And then there are some people who like, it just the cost doesn't make sense, so they withdraw. What's important to note is that you can't commit to something and then complain about it. You can't have the cake and then complain about the sugar.
Also,
like it's either I'm having the sugar or not having the sugar.
Are you saying that to me, Fahad? Are you saying that to me?
I ain't targeting that at no one. I'm targeting that at myself, because Mars would testify. I've known Mars for about 8 or 10 years. I used to be really big. I used to be really huge. And I've worked really hard to come to this level. So food-related stories resonate with me. Like, I want the bloody cake, but I also don't want the sugar that goes with it. So
don't we all? Yeah.
So you've got to make the call. If you want it, then this is what it comes with. If you don't want it, this is what it goes away with.
Sure. Thank you. Great. Maz, you also, you work with a lot of school children, very, very young people as well, and you motivate them. You bring them different hobbies, and you interest them with their reading, and it's a very positive influence that you make. So has it ever bothered you in your personal life, in your privacy kind of?
Yeah. So basically, if when I started putting myself out there, right, and started posting a number of different things, either sporting or reading, a lot of people laughed at me in the beginning. What are you doing? Who? This is not you. And people had a real shot at me, right? And I think at that particular point in time, you need to accept that people will say a lot of things when you start making change, and you have to accept it and grow with it. And over time, as you're following or more people that you start influencing, as that grows, you will notice that a lot of people will start saying things about your post as well. But you are consistent with what you are, right? And that's what you're posting. And if you are consistent, you don't really have to fear too much. There are times when people say, listen, I really don't agree with your post. I think, this doesn't make sense. And it's now, after so many years, I've actually come to that state where I'm like, listen, that's a great perspective. Thank you for that. And I just move on. I move on from the days where I used to argue and, say, okay, I am right and you are wrong. That doesn't really work, and it doesn't really help with anything, because it's good. People have different views. It's good to accept it and just say thank you and take it in. So I think you do get a lot of slack as well, but as long as you're consistent with who you are, you shouldn't worry about it too much. People will have a lot to say. In the beginning, they laugh at you, then they argue with you, and then eventually they stop you, and some of them will even start following you, at some point. The main reason why I actually put stuff out there is not because I want to show off what I've done, but I do it for two reasons, right? So one is, like, for example, it's for me to commit to something. If you want something to happen, sometimes you need to schedule it. So I say, listen, next weekend I'm doing a full marathon. Now I put it on Facebook. I put it on social media. I have no choice now. I have to get it done, right? That's
Right,
a commitment,
okay.
right? And secondly,
Right.
I put it because maybe that inspires somebody. If I can get at least one or two people to do 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers or half a marathon, I mean, I've done some good to the world, right? I've inspired somebody to get off their backs and start running and getting physical exercise. So that's why I do it. It can be perceived differently, but sometimes you just need to let it go because people will have a lot to say. You can't take on the world. Sometimes you just, you obviously have to invite perspective. It's really important. Otherwise, you will only have your own, funnel vision sort of thing. But you need to invite perspective, and sometimes you just need to let it go and not confront as much as you did, before. And that's my perspective.
And that's a great one, Maz. Actually, talking about that, the social responsibility of influencers, I think that is something I personally feel that this is something that we need to address as I don't know, as a country, as people who guide other people, because people need to really understand the positive influence that they can make and they should make for the people who are following them. Any thoughts on that, on the social responsibility part of influencers? What kind of idea do you have? Do you think youth is using this influencer role in a responsible way, or do you think that they need some guidelines to go by? I know that, see, you can set guidelines, but whether to make it happen that way or the other way is up to them. Are there any thoughts that we can share about the social responsibility part of it? Mas, would you take that on, please?
Sure. So I'm not. So when it comes to influencers, I think you do have influencers who promote certain products and services, right? At the same time, you have influencers who basically influence people, or they motivate, inspire people by the work they do. And I think that is a far better place to be in. And if you are in that space, and you are motivating and finding a bigger purpose rather than only serving yourself, I mean, that is an amazing place to be because you're helping so many people out. You can obviously be in other space as well where you are selling products and services, but make sure with whatever you are doing, you are promoting something that's consistent with your brand. Like, for example, if you are saying, you are into health and you are into exercise and you and that is the brand you portrayed out there. You can't really go and probably promote a cigarette, for example. So you need to be aware of those things as well, and that's just my perspective. There will be times when you will get a lot of slack if you are not consistent with your brand. And I think that is also something you need to be conscious of. I mean, what is your brand? Are you good at everything, or are you good at a niche sort of area? And yes, you are passionate about an area, but what is your greater purpose? It's helping others as well, right? It's not only about helping yourself, but if you can find a greater purpose of, inspiring people, I think you're in a much better space because it's not only about you. I mean, that's just the way I see it. I mean, there may be different points of view, but with my limited knowledge, that's the way I look at it.
So, Maz, did you think about when you started on this journey? Did you actually think about a niche audience to go to, and then you branded yourself like that?
So when I started sports and I started my reading, I was very passionate about it, right? But I felt, okay, fine. Now there's so much I can go because I am passionate about this, but how can I inspire others? So whenever I meet people, I just tell them about my story because, like I said before, if you met me a couple of years ago, I had never read a book before. I was one of those backbenchers in school who nobody noticed. Whether I came to school or not, it wasn't really important because nobody cared. So this is where I came from, right? And if I can influence anybody by, whatever I do, for me, that's the greatest thing, because I don't want to be back in that space where I was before. So I don't purposefully do it, but with what I do, if anybody comes up or reaches out to me and say, listen, how do you run a 5-kilometer run, or how do you manage to read 3 books in a row, I will share my knowledge with them, and I probably give them some tips as well. But that's how I would approach influencing people, Sitari.
Right, great. Farhad, when you started and you launched your brand, you launched your website, so what actually were you looking at as your niche market, or is it just general, or do you work on a niche market?
For me, it's not about a niche market. For me, it's about what am I in it for?
Okay.
So it doesn't matter who interacts with me. I mean, in
Right.
terms of work, I know, like, if I'm promoting a training program, then I understand who I'm promoting it for. If I'm, doing an event, I understand who the audience is. But this is a question on a different plane, and that is, in terms of promoting my brand, it's about do these values resonate with different people? So let's say, for example, right, one of my values is that is energy, and everything I do, I try to communicate that energy. So if you're a young person, like a super young person who interacts with me, energy for you would be my comic posters or whatever, right? If you're a person who's like, in your late teens, early 20s, then maybe energy for you is my weird, shirts. But then if you're a corporate person, the energy for you is my new ideas that I'm bringing in. If you're a very senior person,
Sure.
The energy for you is my insight in trying to restructure how your organization works.
Right.
And the vigor in which it is coming. So it's all tethered back to that core value of energy, but how that gets communicated is different things. So, for instance, when I started my own range of merchandise with my mugs inspired by Farhad Farooq, so there are various traits. So it's colorful, but it's also inspirational. It's also something you can use. And this is across the board. So there are various instances where things would cut across all these target audiences, but there are also instances where that same value is catered in different ways. So you've got to understand what value are you communicating to which target group, but when you look back, there is just consistency in terms of how it's being communicated.
Right, great. Okay, we have a question. We have a few minutes to go. We have a question from the audience, just very quickly. How would a sport help to build a personal branding in an office environment? I think because there's a lot of interest in the corporate environments as well now about healthy living and people taking care of team sports to build up the team spirit of corporates and everything. How would you think this will help someone to promote their personal branding also in a corporate environment using sports? Mas, would you take that on?
Yeah, sure. So I think sports is an important facet of how you brand yourself, and that depends how you want to brand yourself as well. If you want to be seen as a team player, somebody who can work with diversity, with people with different interests, then of course a team sport will depict that you can do it. But what I recently found is individual sports are also very important, as important sometimes as a team sport, because what I have realized is, especially when I go running, maybe for a long distance, right? At a certain point in time, maybe after the first 15 kilometers, your mind tells you to stop, right? Because we've been around for a couple of million years and we're built for survival, right? And your mind tells you when things get difficult and the challenges get tough, you need to stop. And the last 7 kilometers when you're doing a half marathon, it is all mind, and you are coming up with so many different excuses on why you should stop. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow, maybe it's not my time today, my leg is hurting, I'm going to get injured. So many different excuses come to mind, but you continue and do it, and I've noticed over time that really builds grit. So whatever obstacles come your way, you don't give up, right? So I think having a mixture, when you look at the sporting side, you have a mixture of team sport as well as individual sports. It gives you an amazing flavor. you have the the ability to work with diverse individuals on one side, and on the other side you build resilience and grit, so that whatever happens you still remain calm. You can face any challenge because your mind tells you it's difficult, but you still do it anyway. So I think as a branding perspective, if you want to be seen as somebody who has both these traits, sports is a good way of doing it. But for the longest time, what I've seen from a recruiter side, people ask you, okay, tell me a time when you worked in a team. And I think that is important, but that only gives you one perspective. So yeah, that's my point of view.
That's great. We are actually coming close to our time. So before we wrap up, we have a very interesting question from the audience for both you guys. Fahad, if you can take this on. Any benefits and successes that you have achieved because of your concentration on personal branding yourself? What are the successes, benefits that you would have achieved professionally, personally? What can be shared in public, please? Yeah. So Fahad, would you take that on, please?
Yes, indeed, I actually can. If I was to look at in terms of my business, so I'm a transformative coach, which means I do one-on-one coaching for a various range of things. Then I'm also a corporate trainer. I'm also a compeer. I'm also a speaker. And if I look at each of those verticals of business, I can see how much business comes through each of those channels. So if we take LinkedIn for an example, on LinkedIn, I can say at least 30% of my corporate training inquiries and business come through LinkedIn. If I take my one-on-one coaching for an example, almost 80% of that comes across through Instagram, where people see my posts, they see my videos, they interact, and then they message in, hey, we'd like to book a coaching session with you. Now, this medium is not something that I guess coaching was sold or is sold in Sri Lanka, but it's a medium that works for me purely because I live those things I talk about. And I think that those are two very simple examples. Also, when it comes to, like, let's say, for example, hosting events as a compeer, if I post videos about here, this event I'm hosting, these things I'm doing, people see that and they associate. So it's all about that top of the mind recall, right? Hey, they will have a need one day, or somebody will, and then they think, who can serve this need? And if they recall that if you've made an impression in relation to that need, then you are the top of the mind sort of recall for that. It's just like, honestly, it comes to a point of, are you talking about the stuff that you do enough? I think one of the things that I like to say is, like, Sri Lankans don't like to show off, but personal branding is not about showing off. It's about showcasing. So don't show off, just showcase. And I think that's very interesting in terms of how you're supposed to. If you're not going to talk about the stuff you do, then who's going to do it?
Thank you very much. And I think that reiterates your point earlier, that using the media responsibly as well, right? So it reiterates the point. Thank you very much, Fahad. And Maz, quickly before we close up, would you like to touch up on the personal successes and the benefits that you have gained on this journey quickly?
Sure. So for me, a personal brand is something that is a result of a lot of work behind the scenes, right? I mean, whatever I post on Facebook, that is the culmination of, getting up at 4 in the morning and, running, or having actually to read all those books. So my advice and what I would say is, you need to put in that effort. You need to understand there's a process behind everything. It just doesn't happen when you flip a switch. You need to be consistent with that, and don't worry about your brand. It will come out anyway. But you need to put in that effort. That's my.
Thank you very much. Guys, thank you so much. It was just very inspiring for me personally, and I'm sure our audiences really enjoyed your conversation, your input, your perspectives and the sharings. Thank you very much. It was very thought-provoking and inspiring at the same time. So I'm going to hand over to Anton now. Those of you who joined us, thank you very much. Have a lovely day. And thank you very much, Maz. Enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Thank you, Sitari.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Fahad.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Right. Thank you, Sitari. Thank you, Fahad and Maz, for that knowledge share that kept us in rapt attention this hour. Sitari, for steering this conversation, thank you very much. As the traditional way to look at personal branding, I suppose, is by measure of what people say about you once you've left the room. But today we've learned that there is more to it. Building your brand takes authenticity, accountability, transparency, and self-definition. It's about heeding your personal calling, discovering what you love, and then offering it to others for inspiration. You become the brand, so make your brand outstanding. As rightly brought out by Fahad and Mas, whether you're into snazzy socks or athletic feats, if you live to inspire, you are a brand par excellence. What defines your brand? Well, while you ponder, let me leave you with these thoughts. Be wise, be yourself, because everyone else is already taken. On that note, I'd like to thank H1 for being the power behind the entire series over the past 3 months. As we wrap up the season, I would like to extend our gratitude to the subject matter experts who joined us on this expedition and made every single session a roaring success. Thank you to our trainers who hosted these sessions, the team behind the scene toiling tirelessly, and of course, the brains behind the operations, none other than the destiny architect, the extraordinaire, Vidusha Nathavitharana, who I know is silently and quietly listening from behind the scenes this afternoon. Coming up in the next hour is This, That, and the Other with Varun. And today, the discussion is the good, bad, and the ugly of the controversial topic, myths about engagement laid bare. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and the weekend. Stay safe, stay productive.